Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah, and in this episode, we sit down with Giancarlo Bernini. Now, you've probably heard of Giancarlo Bernini because he has been crushing it. He was on Fool Us, he has exploded, he's been performing everywhere, and after the pandemic, he's been sitting tight and waiting, and now he is going on a tour, a national tour, and it has been so fun to watch that happen on Facebook. So if you want to learn a little bit about performing virtually, crushing, growing your business, going on tour, inventing magic, and so much more, you're going to love this episode with Giancarlo Bernini. Enjoy. Giancarlo Bernini, how are you?
Hey, Jonah, it's great to be with you. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I am super pumped to have you. For listeners at home, 4 days ago, we hopped on a call, and then I don't know what happened. My house was struck by lightning or something, but the power in my entire neighborhood went down, so we had to put a pause. But that gave me some more time to dig even deeper into some of your stuff. So I'm really, really pumped to have you here, pumped to talk magic. You're doing some really cool things right now at this instant with your tour, so I'm glad to be able to catch you. Why don't we kind of zoom all the way back for people to know how you even ended up here? So how did you end up in magic in the first place?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have the traditional story of the kid who got a magic set for Christmas, you know? Wait, I have both the stories. I have my dad showed me a card trick, and then I got a magic set for Christmas, and those two things kind of snowballed. But I always say I was into magic before I knew what magicians were. So I remember back when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, my favorite movies, Aladdin and the Sword and the Stone, because the genie, there's the wizard. I would watch the scene where Mickey Mouse would put the hat on in Fantasia and make the broomsticks dance around. I'd watch that on repeat as a little kid. And again, I'd never seen a magic trick before, but that was like, for as long as I can remember, I'm like, I want to be like that guy on the screen. I always identified with those characters, not like whoever the main character happened to be. So it's always been a part of me, and I can't really explain it. But I've always just been fascinated by it.
And talk to me about how you maybe explored that fascination. So was it magic clubs? Was it individuals? Was it books? What really led you into the non-Disney world of magic?
Right. So that was once I started learning card tricks and things that the way you normally would. I started going to magic clubs, and really most magicians have the experience of, you take a deck of cards to school, and then your friends think it's cool, and then you get it, all the normal stuff. And then in high school, what would happen is there was a night that they had a school dance, and we had this idea, and I don't remember whose idea it was first, but we had this idea of, there's a lot of kids here who don't like the social aspect of it. They don't have a date to the dance, or they don't like to dance. They just kind of want to, but they don't want to miss out on the school event. It's like, what if we set you up, we've got the dance in the cafeteria. What if we set you up in one of the classrooms and have you do a magic show while the school dance is going on? You do 3 shows throughout the night, one every hour, 3-hour dance, 30-minute show every whatever. And people would cycle through. So they'd announce on the dance floor, hey, if you want to go see the magic show, take a break from the dancing, go do that. And that was my first real experience, putting on shows for people, because I was also the kid who didn't like to dance. I was also the kid who would much rather be in the room, watching a magic show than dancing. So I kind of that kind of was a thing. And then also I spent a lot of time volunteering at a local children's cancer clinic, doing some stuff in the lobby there for the patients. And that was really the turning point where I realized the effect, not to be cheesy about it, but the effect that magic has on people, aside from, because at that time it was like, look what I can do. And then it shifted that mindset to, wait, this is something that isn't about me anymore. This is about doing something for someone else. That experience there, because it was in the lobby. It wasn't like while they were, it was in that moment where they're waiting in the lobby and you don't really know what's going to happen. And that's, I feel, talking to them, that was the scariest part. Because once you're in there, you're talking to the doctors but those 30 minutes you're waiting in the lobby and being able to go up and just kind of give them some joy in that moment really impacted me from a really young age. And I try to strive to kind of continue that, I guess, goal in current performances.
First of all, that's an incredible thing to do, an incredible place, like, for anybody to go and perform magic and really feel the value in what you do. And also just for you to understand how powerful it is to give people a little bit more fun and to help them kind of escape the reality in the world they're in. And I always recommend to people, if they're early on in their career and they want to do something, do it for charity. Because if you raise money or if you're doing it for people who would really benefit from it, and there's many, many different ways, then it doesn't matter what you charge. None of that matters. It just matters you going out there, having fun. You get to learn to perform and you get to really see it resonate with an audience. So that's incredible. Talk to me about how you kind of took it a little bit seriously. Maybe that was like the aha moment or a light bulb moment. Was there something in your life that you were like, taking this seriously? Even now, is magic a full-time thing for you? I assume that you're pretty busy with it. So talk to me about how you kind of decided to get really serious about it.
Yeah. Well, when I went to college, it was still kind of like one of those like dream goal type things where it's like, okay, it would be awesome if I could do magic full time, but like no one actually does that. Like there's maybe like a couple of people and they're all in Vegas performing. I had never met, I'd met a few, but I'd met very few magicians who were doing it full time and successfully and loving it and having a great time. And then I remember freshman year of college, I was at UT Austin, and the TAOM, the Texas Magic Convention, happened to be in Austin that year. And I went, and it was my first magic convention ever. And I was surrounded by all these incredible people who were doing it full time and loving it. And I was like, wait, this suddenly seems extremely doable. And just going to that convention, like, changed my mindset again. First convention ever. And you feel like, wait, all these people, like this thing that I thought was an impossible goal, all these people are just doing it and it's their everyday life. And it seems like I can do it just as easily. So that was a bit mindset shift. And then in college around then, I started doing shows for fundraisers for like fraternities and sororities and stuff like that. They all wanted to, they all have philanthropies and stuff that they need to raise money for. And so.
And let me ask, did you took it upon yourself to reach out to them, or they heard about you and they were bugging you?
It started with, I was in a fraternity myself. I was pledging fraternity, and they needed a fundraiser. They needed to do a fundraiser. They told us like we needed to raise money for some kind of event. I forgot what it was. And I said, well, I could do a magic show. And that seemed like the easiest way. And everyone else was like, oh, great. So you're going to do all the work and all we have to do is just get friends to come. And then I kind of set it up that way because I wanted the experience. I sold it to them like that. It wasn't like, I'm not saying they put that on me, but I pitched it as that. I said, look, it's easy. I'll do all the work. You just get people to show up. And for me, it was my way of getting my name out there. So, and then once I started doing that, it became kind of an annual thing. And then other groups and other organizations and then other groups at other schools started to hear and reach out, and it just kind of snowballed.
Amazing. And I mean, so a couple things there. So first of all, I love, that the convention was a really, really, really big turning point for you, because I think, one thing that makes a big difference is when we connect with the magic community and just realize like, oh my goodness, it's not just Vegas. I think for me too, like the magnitude of magicians that there are is kind of a little pat on the butt, that this stuff is possible. When you think it's just you and then the people you see on TV, it's hard to imagine that this could be real, but then you kind of realize it does. So that's a really, really cool moment. And then talk to me about kind of how that progressed. You were doing shows for fraternities, sororities, other organizations, and there must have been something going through your head. Like, what were you studying at school? There must have been something going through your head going like, hey, this magic thing is working. So talk to me about what your next steps were there.
Yeah, originally I went to, I was an RTF major, radio, television, film, and I wanted to be a movie director. That was what I went into college thinking. One semester in, I was like, this isn't for me. I don't enjoy it. And it was right after OM, and I started taking this very seriously. And I started thinking, I'm gonna try my hand at this magic thing. And I tried. I was kind of trying to set up like a way to do it, like trying to make connections with magicians or try to figure out like, hey, how do you do it? Like, is there is there like a set path to do it? And we've all figured out like there's no set way to do it. Everyone kind of figures out their own way to do it. But I changed my major to religious studies only because I found it fascinating, and I was really interested in it, not necessarily because I wanted to do anything like in that field. There was a point at which I almost considered going to seminary, and that was just a totally different aspect of my life. I remember one time I was in an Uber and I was on college campus, and the Uber driver goes, "Oh, so you go to UT? What are you majoring in?" And I'm like, "Oh, religious studies." Like, "Oh, what are you going to do with that?" I'm like, "Well, I'm either going to be a professional magician or I'm going to go to seminary and be a Catholic priest." And then there was like this awkward silence for the rest of the ride. Like, what do you do with that? But that's where I found myself. That's where I was for about 2 years of college. And then senior year, I started getting these bookings for gigs, and I decided, you know what, I think where I belong is magic. And I started getting the actual like, oh, random people, like people that are not my friends, are reaching out and asking me to do shows. I think this is how this works. I think this is how this happens.
It's very funny the way you paint that, because, it's a very similar situation to me where I was on the path to do math, this or that, I don't know what, some mathy thing. And it was just, there was so many more people that were interested and excited about the magic I was doing, the shows I was doing, the projects, magic related, than anybody asking me to solve a quadratic, function, or anybody asking me to do any math problems or anything like that. And it just became instinctually clear where the demand was, so it sounds like you kind of went through something similar. First of all, what an incredible journey. I think a lot of people maybe can relate to that, especially now. I feel like I relate a lot to that timeline that you just put together. I think other people do. And especially kind of having to decide between doing one thing or another. I think no matter where you are in your life, some people are making that decision and they're 30 years, or 20 years into their corporate life or something like that. So I definitely think a lot of people can resonate with that. Talk to me about where you went from there. So bookings started to kind of happen. What did you do to take it upon yourself? I know, I assume in short order afterwards, you were on Fool Us, which was incredible. Was that kind of the next step for you? Was that all part of it? Talk to me about how these things came together sequentially.
That was a big part of it. So senior year of college that I got on Fool Us. And I auditioned the year before, and it's because it all kind of leads up, right? I went to this, there was the problem with the fraternity, just to go back to the problem with the fraternity shows, is that if I'm doing the same one every semester, or doing a fraternity show every semester, I'm having to do a brand new show every 6 months, like putting together an entire new show, scripting. These are like an hour long shows. As a kid who I didn't understand, no one had ever taught me like what you need to do is you need to like have this one show that you just work on and do over and over again until it's perfect, right? I didn't know this. I just go, oh, I'm going to put on a magic show. And then after it's done, I didn't, and for better or for worse, I didn't really care that much about feedback after the show. They're like, oh, I like this trick. You could have done this better. And people tried to give me feedback. And I was like, I'm not going to do these tricks again. I have to do a whole new show next to it. I'm not going to. I took feedback on the general things, but specific tricks, it's like, I'm not going to do this again. And I remember coming up with this idea. It was like my junior year. I think it was junior year. And I was like, I've done all my best stuff. I need to come up with something at this point. So I'm obsessed with time travel, just because of Back to the Future, one of my favorite movies. And I go, what if we built a time machine? And that's where it started. It was one of those things where it didn't start with a method. It started with this idea of, what if I built a time machine, and what if it looked like what it actually, like, make it not like some stupid, like, double lift, like, oh, look, the card went back to where it used to be. But like actual, if you had a time machine, what would that actually look like in real life? And so we started talking and developing that routine with help from other magicians. And we did that at one of the fraternity shows. And then next year, I pitched a routine to Fool Us that was a mentalism routine. They didn't like it. And then I hear everyone tells me, if you're going to get on Fool Us, you need to talk to Brent Braun. So I talked to Brent Braun over at the Magic Firm, and I'm like, hey, Brent, I had this thing. How do we fix this to make it better? And he goes, don't pitch that routine, pitch something else. And I'm like, well, what do I do? He's like, let me see your show. We have this time machine thing. He's like, that's a 20-minute routine. I can't put that on Fool Us. He's like, well, we're going to make it 6 minutes and we're going to make it great. And I worked with Brent and we got on the show and it was fantastic. Just one of the craziest experiences of my life, which, I don't know how much you want to get into that. But then after that, and I'm realizing, you know what? I really want to do this for the rest of my life. And I talked to Brent, who, for anyone who doesn't know, he's a magic consultant, incredible. I'm sure he's probably come up in the podcast in the past.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because he also consults on the business side of things. I'm like, hey, I am graduating in 3 months and I want to do this full time. and I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I have magic tricks that I know. I have a lot of material that I'm not super good at any of it, but like I have a lot of material that I've put together over the past few years performing because of all these show. Every time I had to come up with a new show, help me out here. And he gave me some incredible advice, and he still does. And I just kind of, I mean, it's still, I'm at this stage still where it's like taking it one step at a time. Every day is, what does it mean to be a professional magician? What does that look like today? What am I doing tomorrow? It's every day asking that. And so I'm still, that's the phase I'm in now, you know?
What an incredible journey, and what an incredible, moment in time, that all of these things are kind of happening all at once. I want to kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that happened post, but you mentioned, it was an incredible experience. Was there a specific highlight or low light or scary thing or moment, that happened in that whole Fool Us journey that you think we would really benefit from getting behind the scenes with you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a really a funny thing that happened on the show, and I just, people are interested in this because it comes up in all the YouTube comments. If you watch the video, there's a moment where I have to text Penn a photograph, and then Penn gets the photograph, and everyone claps, and all the YouTube comments are like, "Wow, TV is so weird. Why did they put in audience studio laughter when Penn received a photograph?" And I just want to say, this wasn't bad editing. It wasn't the producers like being like, "Oh, this would be a great moment for laughter." What happened was we had 2 minutes of waiting for that text to come through. And it was the most awkward 2 minutes because they also told me like, "Hey, if something goes wrong or in this moment, just stand perfectly still because they're just going to edit out all the wait time, all the dead time." And so I'm on stage for literally 2 minutes. And the text is not going through, and we're waiting, and then it finally goes through and everyone claps, and they can't edit that out. And so that's why that's there. But it's just things you don't think about. But also I learned a lot about how to deal with TV and how that's different from live. Like, normally I'd want to distract. I want to, in that moment, if that text isn't going through, I'm going to try to fill it and be as entertaining as possible on stage. But on TV, it's like, no, you stand perfectly still and you don't move. And learning those differences, I think, was really, really key for me. Just because now I'm prepped to do that again,
Not only is that huge, but also what an incredible moment in time of just standing on stage, arguably the most stressful moment, of your life, for 2 minutes, standing perfectly still, waiting for AT&T, to push through, a text message. You're just going, oh my goodness, for 2 minutes. That must have been bonkers.
Right, just staring at Penn and Teller, just watching them, and they're staring at me like, "What's going on?" And I found out the producers backstage were kind of like, "Hey, what's going on?" And no one knew, and I'm just like, I just need to wait and hope it goes through. But yeah, it was in the moment. It was because I also don't like, if this thing doesn't go through, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know I didn't plan for this, and so I guess I always naively assumed that there wouldn't be any tech issues, which I shouldn't have done. And then
Wild. Okay, so you are kind of part of the group of magicians. I'll go back. People talk about the group of kids that were born in the pandemic. They wash their hands with Purell before they enter a room, and when they enter a restaurant, they learn all these things because that's where they grew up in. And obviously you were doing magic for fraternities, and you're doing lots of magic and gigs and lots and Fool Us and all that before the pandemic. But you are part of the group of people where the timing just crunched, where probably it felt like at the most exciting that things were at the time you got punched in the gut with the pandemic, right after you decided, okay, magic is the way to go. I'm betting the house on magic, betting the farm on magic, and the pandemic came. So, I'm sure obviously a lot echoes the journey of a lot of people, but I think there were a lot of magicians that not only had to pivot, but there were a lot of magicians who were just getting exploding or getting growing, maybe at different levels. And you had to pivot really quickly. So walk us through kind of what that was like for you, how that was like. Was it exciting? Was it horrifying? And now, we'll get back to now that you're kind of on tour, which is incredibly exciting. But, to get back to now, I'm sure it took a lot. So talk to us a little bit about how you moved through COVID.
Yeah. And so I graduated college 2019. August, I started going full time. And of course, December 2019 is when COVID starts popping up.
And you were on Fool Us in there too, right? In 2019?
Yeah. It was 2019. So Fool Us happened June 2019, right after I graduated. I went on vacation with my family for the summer. And then August, I hit the ground running. I'm like, I'm doing this full time. And in that time, I mean, it was November, the largest audience I have still ever performed for, 25,000 people in Lucas Oil Stadium that November. I mean, that's how quickly the momentum built up. And,
Yeah.
and granted, I do a lot of stuff with the church market, especially with the Catholic Church, and so I kind of have a niche market there, and that's the big reason that I was able to get so many gigs so quickly, is because there's really no one else in the Catholic world billing themselves as a magician, like performing for these groups. So I kind of owned that market and built the momentum super fast for that. And then COVID hits. I'm trying to figure out. It's still early 2020. Gigs are slowly. I remember the emails of, hey, if we need to switch to virtual, or if we need to cancel and postpone, like what would that look like? And I'm starting like, I don't like where this is going. We go virtual, but I'm gonna say this: doing the virtual shows, and I leaned into it. I started doing the virtual magic thing. I still do. I'm still doing a ton of virtual shows. It ultimately helped me. There's one key thing that I remember doing. I do a lot of mentalism in my show, and I'd never done pre-show work before. That's one thing that I was just like, you know what? I feel like that just is not my thing. It's too uncomfortable for me. I wouldn't know how to start doing it. I don't know where the line. I don't even know where the line is, and the ethics of like, is this too close to stooging or whatever? I didn't know. I'd never touched it. When I start doing virtual shows, and I'm doing virtual shows for people who have seen my live shows, and I want the virtual show experience to match that level of the live shows, I'm like, I'm going to have to. Like, I was forced to. I was like, I'm going to have to do some pre-show stuff in order for this to be anything remotely close to what I can do live. Because the question, if you can read someone's mind in your live show, why can't you read it the same way virtually? So then I started doing it, and I got really comfortable with it, and I ended up coming up with some really creative ways to do it. And now I do it a lot more in my live shows because I'm so comfortable for it. So if it wasn't for the virtual shows, I never would have started doing pre-show work. And my current stage show, I don't think would be where it is. I have some really cool moments now.
One theme, that I hear a lot, that I think you said for better or for worse, I think definitely for better. One theme that I hear a lot in what you're talking about is how many times you have had to recreate and reinvent yourself. First making a new show every semester, then working on a trick quite seriously with Brent Braun, which is an incredible experience. And then after just starting to try to get sharp, in your business and things start working, bam, have to reinvent yourself again, for virtual and relearn how to do these things. And I think, hopefully this is a lesson for people that you learn by doing. You learn by doing. You don't learn from the sidelines by thinking about it or whatever. Like, you learn in the actual ring. It makes me think of a stand-up comedian, who writes a new show every year versus one who does the same material for 10 years. And, at first, the one who does the same material for 10 years seems like they're better because their stuff is sharper. But then over time, the one who can actually make new jokes, write new material, is more creative, can come up with things, is the one who wins over time because they can have repeat audiences. They can have fans. They can have people who like their style and the way they do things.
And it makes me more comfortable too with like putting new things in the show. Like, I am a little less, I think, scared of than some of the other magicians I know of putting something new in the show that might completely bomb. Because I'm so used to just doing, it used to be that when I was doing these fraternity shows, every trick in the show was new, and I'd never put it in front of an audience before. Only my roommates had seen it. I'd do it maybe 3-4 times for my roommates in the garage. Like, I'd set up my show. I wouldn't even set up the whole show. I'd do bits. I'd comment like, hey, can you guys come down here for a sec? I'm working on something. They'd come down. We'd do that one routine, and I'd never put them all together on stage. So obviously terrible. I'm not saying anyone should do this. I definitely rehearse your show and I know that now, but I definitely have the confidence to, you know what, I've got a good show. I'm going to take this trick out. I'm going to put this new thing in. And, I listened to, David Copperfield talk on, different interviews and podcasts about how he will If it's good, he'll get it good enough to put in front of an audience, but then he'll keep tweaking, keep changing, and be like, all right, that wasn't. And instead of being okay, they didn't like it, I'm going to take it out. He goes, they didn't like it, we're going to keep working on it, fixing it until they like it. And I've kind of been inspired by that approach. I kind of want to do the same thing.
I love that. I think finding material that you like and that inspires you is half the battle. And if you start with that, then figuring out a way to make them like it and to make it resonate with other people certainly works. And you've been creating unique and awesome material for quite a while now. So it sounds like it's working. I want to talk about a couple different I guess it's kind of stranger pieces. The first thing I wanted to talk about was NFTs and magic. I know this was a topic that you started speaking about for quite a bit, and I am, as I'm sure many listeners are, absorbed in the world of crypto and all of the fun things that it can do, not as just a currency, but, it can do incredible things. And NFTs is one of those amazing things. And I think there's a lot of people who maybe have no idea what I'm talking about. There's maybe some people who have kind of an idea what I'm talking about. And maybe some people who are like, NFTs and magic? What are you talking about? So I'm going to kind of pass it over to you and explain, to maybe unpack, because I assume you've done it more than I have, what is an NFT, I guess, and then what the relationship is between NFTs and magic.
Yeah. So an NFT stands for non-fungible token. And essentially what it is kind of, oh man, and the world it's changed so quickly. There's so much. What the definition of what it is has expanded so much since I first started talking about it that it's hard for me to even keep up. But basically, it's this digital thing that even though you can copy paste, for example, a photograph, say it's a JPEG, say it's whatever, it's this digital file. Even though you can copy paste it, it's not the original, and you can tell it's not the original because of the way that it's coded. So it's kind of a way for things to be collectible digitally.
It's encoded proof of ownership.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like the best way I can say it is it's encoded proof of ownership. So
yeah.
So people can pay for things, exchange things. Is that a good way to think about it, or is there maybe a couple nuances?
That's exactly how you should think about it. It's anyone can have a picture of the Mona Lisa, but there's only one real one, and it's in the Louvre. And it's the same thing. Anyone can have this file, but only one person might actually has this proof of ownership for it. And again, it's so hard to think about. You got to talk about it in analogies. But the cool thing about it, and the reason that it picked up a lot of steam in the art world, especially and in the music world, is because it allowed the original creator to earn royalties every time that it was resold, because it's all trackable on the blockchain. That's not the side of it that interested me. For Magic, it was the fact that, like you said, proof of ownership. Well, how does that apply to things like intellectual property in Magic? That's the side of it that fascinated me. And I'll be completely honest, I wasn't the first person it wasn't my idea to bring Magic into this. I was talking about Magic on the Clubhouse app, which was a whole thing during the pandemic, which it's still up there. And someone, Ray, he's a lawyer up in Boston. He reached out and he's really into NFTs, and he got me into it, and he goes, "Hey, I'm really into NFTs. I'm fascinated by how it might apply to Magic." He's like, "I don't know much about the Magic world. Let's talk about that." So we hop on some calls, and we discover that NFTs could provide a way for magicians to claim ownership of something they've created in Magic without having to reveal it. So we've all heard of the stories of like, oh, well, if you patent something, then that patent becomes public information. It's easy to figure out. So you don't want to, patent whatever the invention is, or some things aren't patentable. We all know about Teller's copywriting, his rose illusion and all that. But then, that it's hard to apply that to everything. But it's like, what if you could claim, hey, I created this thing. And right now in the Magic world, we claim ownership by putting things in print, by publishing them, putting it in a magazine, putting it out in a book. You say, hey, this is mine, I created it. But then that's exposure, right? Or you have to have some kind of clip on YouTube of you performing, but it's like, oh, well, I had this earlier. It's all messy. So it's like, what if, and this is the hard part, right, is getting magicians to come on board, is getting everyone to kind of, adopt this and see it as necessary. And again, that's a conversation that I'm constantly having with magicians is this necessary? Do we need this? But I think it works. And what I say is, if we need it, if we agree that we need it, then it works. Then I think it works. Because what we did, and in creating the first Magic NFT, is I basically created, it's just a PDF with the instructions for how to do the time machine trick that I did on Foolish. Specifically the box, the design of the box. It's something that I innovated enough to be able to claim as mine because of a few different things. I did the research. I'm like, yeah, this is something new. And it's funny because most magicians will see it and think, oh, that's just a standard product. It's actually not, and we can get into that if we need to. But it's actually has some really clever designs that I'm like, you know what? I think this is mine, and I kind of want to claim it as my own. I want to say this is something that I'm really proud of. And what if we made it an NFT? What if we put the instructions online? And the thing is, it's not for sale. And that's the thing. Unlike other NFTs, I'm not trying to sell the instructions of it. I don't want anyone to know how it works. I don't want the public being able to access it. But it's there, and I can say, hey, that's mine. You can see it's on the blockchain. I created this. I minted it on the blockchain on this date. And here's the PDF. And if anyone else ever does it, and there's a dispute of, oh, well, actually, I created this effect, I can at that point open it up and show it to them and say, well, actually, here's where I wrote down, I can, it's not accessible now, but if I need to, I can open, I can say, here's where I wrote down how the trick works. And you can see, undisputedly, I minted this on this date. So unless you have proof that you had it earlier, I have, absolute proof that I minted this idea.
Wow.
And I claimed it as mine on this day.
Wow. First of all, I think it's incredible. I also think every single industry is going to get touched by crypto and NFT in the next 6, 12, 18, 24, 36 months. Every single industry is going to get touched by it. And something about this feels really, really right. I'll share an idea that's bouncing around in my head, which is there was a recent NFT project where you buy the NFT and it's like blank. You can't actually see what it is. But if you combine it with another one or a different one or whatever, then you actually can see what it is. And it's interesting that would solve a lot of problems of actually, the methods. And, I think back to magicians who release limited numbers of books, limited numbers of things like that, who can basically do the exact same thing, but without, limiting the printing. Now, again, whether magic needs it or will go that direction, I don't know, but it may automatically go that direction if purchasing goes the way of NFTs. Like every purchase may be tracked and things may kind of automatically go that direction. But this is really, really exciting.
And I'll say that I want to add this too. I've had the conversation too with a lot of magicians who say, look, this is awesome and it seems to work, but I don't feel the need for it. No one's ripping off my material to the point where I need to mint an NFT and then show it to them and all that. And I get that. It depends on where you are and how much of a creator you are. And I get that the magic world might not be feeling the need for it, but there's another side to it, which is if the rest of the art world is going in this direction, right? When we're always talking about magic being recognized as an art, I think there's something to say for just being a part of that world and wanting to integrate our art form into that crypto world. And this is a way to do that. Just the fact that as magicians, we can integrate, Penn and Teller released an NFT recently, and it wasn't a magic trick. It was just cool artwork, but it's trying to bring magic into the NFT space, which I think is important. And, we're talking about magicians guarding an empty safe. There was a press release that we did when we did this. And the whole thing was magicians are now hiding their secrets in the blockchain. Now, any magician reads it and is okay, cool. But, lay people, they thought that was super interesting, right? We guard the empty safe. The idea that magicians are using the blockchain to hide their secrets is just such an interesting buzzword of an idea. And I'm saying this on a podcast that magicians listen to. I wouldn't say this in, an interview that, the general public listens to. But I get that it's not as cool as it sounds. But it sounds pretty cool. And that's all we do is we create this illusion of our world being super cool and secret. I mean, we do that all the time.
There's a couple things you said that I really love. The first is, as magicians, we should lean in to go participate in these subcultures that like, we may be able to have overlap in. So just as a reminder, instead of judging these things and saying we don't need it, like leaning into it is a good idea. And as we see week after week after week in the crypto and NFT space, there's innovations happening. So sooner or later, the innovation is going to come to our art form because it's touching every single other art form, from music to art, both physical and, just every single art form is being touched by this. So that's a big piece. The second thing is, I think it actually solves a lot. The thing that's bouncing around in my head is the problem between the exposure people and the non-exposure people is that everyone should have access to magic. It should just not be available to the public. That's where we agree. Where we agree is that everyone should be able to access and learn magic. It's just not that the public should be able to easily discover it. And this solves that issue in really interesting ways, and a whole bunch of other magic issues that have magicians shaking their fist at each other.
Well, also think about like building rights and performance rights,
Mm-hmm.
If an illusion builder creates an illusion, like, do they have the right to build this illusion? Who has the rights to build Jen Steinmeier's whatever, what if you had an NFT? What if you say, hey, you're doing my thing. Like, did you purchase that from an authorized builder? Show me your NFT.
12 people
right?
will
like,
ever be allowed to do this thing, and they own the NFTs for it. And if you want,
right.
you can sell the
see
right.
Who they are.
Right. If somebody else wants to sell the right to someone else, you get a commission of that if that's how you wrote the code for that NFT.
Yeah, you get a commission, and then they can't do it anymore because they've lost that NFT, and you can track it.
Right.
And
all of it's trackable.
That's the big thing, is it's all trackable. And it depends on how you write it. If you want people to be able to resell it but still be able to do it, but it's all tracked.
Now, you did, a really, really big press release talking about this. You got on some media channels and did a really, really great job. Did anything kind of come of it for you? Are there any more projects on the pipeline? Or it was a fun project that you did a fun splash, and that was kind of it for now?
We're still talking about it. It's going to be, I'll put it this way. We have some really cool ideas, and I've been talking to a couple other magicians in the crypto space about how to further integrate this and making it easier and more accessible for magicians who don't have, say, crypto wallets, who want to do this, but they don't, they're not. We want to make it accessible for magicians. It's a long process, and it's kind of there along with all the other things. I'm also going to say this happened mid-pandemic. We're all sitting on our computers 10 hours a day. I don't have the time anymore that I did then to devote to it. So I will confess that I've kind of put that a little bit on the back burner, just because with things opening back up, I know that I need to be firing on all cylinders on getting my live show back and running, because that's really what I want to be doing. But this NFT thing, that doesn't mean I'm letting it go. It's still happening. Conversations are still happening. We're still doing stuff. It's just happening a little slower right now.
In the talk of this, you were talking about, press releases. You were talking about, the team of you were talking about also when you launched, getting some advice from Brent Braun, and even still to this day. Now, are you doing it solo? Do you work with a manager? Do you work with a team, or a publicist? How are you doing things right now? Because you seem to be in newspapers, on tours and things like that. And one might think that there's more than two hands, working at this.
Right. So right now, it is very much a one-man operation still, but it's there is a team of people that help me regularly. So one is Brent, still constantly, I'm constantly consulting with him. Almost everything I do, I run it through. I'm like, hey, just look at this. Tell me if there's anything that you think, he, and I tell people honestly, the reason I'm able to be successful doing magic full time is because of Brent. And I give him credit for that. I still run everything by him. Then also there's a travel advisor that's been working with me when I started working on this tour. What had happened was her name is Laura Palmer. She's awesome. She was an event planner, or still is an event planner, but also a travel advisor. And she was doing the event planning thing, and she had hired me for an event, and we stayed in touch. And then she got back into the travel advising side of things. And because of that, she reached out. She's like, hey, I see you're traveling a lot. And we kind of started talking about things. And she's the one who's handling basically everything, hotels, air flights, everything travel related. She's taking care of for this tour. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think I could do it with now knowing what I know now, how it's gone. I don't think I could have handled it. It was so much logistical overload that, yeah, she does all the travel, and that's taking a huge weight off me. I have my friend Kyle Hartman, who's out in LA. He does music, incredible musician, and he wrote the music for my show. So all the music in the show is original and composed specifically for those tricks, which is something I've never had before, never done before. But I really wanted this show to be mine. I really wanted to say this is my show. Most of the material in it is stuff that I've either come up with or I've put a spin on. And now the music is mine, and just everything's kind of slowly morphing into something unique that you can only experience when you come to my show. And that's huge thanks to Kyle. My friend Michael he's a friend of mine from high school, actually. He still helps me with all the tech stuff, with all the, technical directing side. Like, he's like, hey, try this color, try that sound. If you should move over here, directing side of things. And I still talk to friends. I always run everything by friends. So it is a one-man operation, but it's also very much not. There's also a ton of people who I run everything by and who have helped me with so many things.
I was going to say, hopefully this is advice for people who are trying to take on fun projects, that it's never alone. Like never. There's like no project that's ever alone, and it's a myth. We're all community made, we're all built out of the people who are around us, and who help us. And I love that you get support in these incredible ways that allow you to shine and crush it. And doing something like getting original music is not something that everybody does, but it's something that is awesome, and it makes you feel good, and it's worth it. And it makes the quality of your show, obviously noticeably, better. People notice these things,
Oh, just, yeah. There's something about being able to say, because so many times I messaged Kyle and I was like, hey, the big crescendo of the song happens here, but I'm doing the reveal. I've been doing the show 3-4 times now. The reveal is happening 10 seconds earlier. I can't change anything about what I'm doing. Can we change the music? And just having that freedom to, instead of changing my act, changing the music, like that's a degree of freedom I've never had before. And it's been so incredible to be able to do that. And Kyle is also really good about, he created some tracks where I can actually trigger the crescendo of the song, like the climax of the song, to happen when I want to, so that it'll fade out of the main part of the song and go into the climax. So I don't have to worry about timing. Whenever I know I'm about to do something, I'll hit a button and you won't notice the song changes. It seems like it just naturally goes into the climax at that point, but I'm controlling when that's happening, which is, again, ridiculously cool. Kyle's incredible.
That is incredible. And, that leads us to talk a little bit about this tour. I think in a post-COVID world, or kind of where we are right now, there's not only people eager to go see shows, but also people eager and magicians eager to go perform shows. I saw I saw a lot more happening in the UK right now with Darren Brown, and I know Chris Cox put on an incredible show there for a little while with a team of amazing magicians. And I'm starting to hear the buzz of like touring acts coming, these big acts coming in, but for whatever reason, you seem to be kind of the first person who's like, what? I'm packing my bags and I'm going on tour. COVID's done, or not really, but you know what I mean? Like enough right. That I feel comfortable and safe. And we're going out there and doing a tour and just bringing fresh material to fresh places and seeing familiar faces that you haven't seen in years. So before we get into the nitty gritty, just talk to us about kind of what got you to pack your bags and get on tour right now.
Yeah, essentially the plan or the idea was, I had this show that I had this new show that I've been working on, and during the pandemic, and I was like, as soon as I get out, this is going to be the new show, and I want people to see it. And I was posting about it a lot, about the process. That's one thing I'd never done before, is on social media I was posting like, hey, I'm out here building props. I got a membership at a wood shop, so I can build my own props for some tricks that I need stuff. And I'm posting, hey, I'm rehearsing. I'm doing a test show in my living room. If anyone's in Dallas, come over to my living room and watch my test show. And people were messaging like, hey, when are you coming up here to watch the show? Half jokingly, like, hey, but not really. Like, they're like, oh, this seems awesome. Like, are you ever coming up here for a show? And enough people started saying that where I'm like, well, yeah, let me look up for the next opportunity. Now, at the same time, corporate events, which is a lot of what I was doing, and also church events, both of those together, were still in the kind of virtual realm. Corporate is still doing virtual. Churches are still struggling a little bit financially with everything. And so for both of those reasons together, even though people are ready to go back to seeing live shows, there's the vaccine now, there's masks, in-person events can happen safely again, I feel. And I am vaccinated. I did make sure, I'm all of that stuff. I'm going by all the COVID, policies in whatever city I'm in. people want to see the shows, but I wasn't getting live bookings. Everything was either still virtual or we'd love to do it, but we don't have the budget right now because of COVID. And so I kind of hopped on Facebook. I hopped on LinkedIn. I hopped on all these places and saw my friends from summer camp, my friends from high school, my friends from college. Where did they all go? And I created this big spreadsheet and I started to see that there were some cities that were like, wait, there's a lot of people in Chicago. There's a lot of people in New York that I know. I didn't realize I knew this many people in these cities. And the idea of going on a national tour was something that was like a bucket list thing. I'm like, you know what? Someday in my magic career, maybe when I'm 30, 40, 50 years old, I'm going to be able to say I went on a national tour of public shows, not just like people just hiring me for private events, but just public shows where I rented out a theater and we sold it out and we had a blast. And, it was one of those like, I don't really have anything going on September, October, November. Why don't we just do it? So I started messaging people, every single one of those cities, like, hey, if I came and did a show, would you come out? And once I got enough people say yes, I got online and I rented out a venue. And I just said, this is the day. Then I kind of went back to people like, all right, we're doing it. Buy your tickets. Once people bought enough tickets to cover the cost of the venue, then I bought the flights. And so it was like a back and forth thing, just making sure that everything's like, building it to this point where I could go around and, the idea was to do 10 cities. Right now we're up to like 17, 18. We're still working on it because there was so much excitement, so much momentum. So many people started, when I announced like, oh, are you adding a stop here? I'm like, I can. Like, do you have like enough people to like enough friends who want to see it? And I do the search. So it was very much yeah.
First of all, love it. Love how grassroots it is, and love, one of the things that I'm a huge advocate for is like, everyone's like, I want to sell my thing, but not to anybody I know. No, the opposite, everybody who all your friends and family and old friends and old pals and people and people have heard of, and those are the people that should be coming and being a part of these things. And I love the way that you invited the world, or whoever wanted to be a part of it. And it's just really, really exploded. I guess, there's a million exciting things going on. And I think everybody should, if they're not, go follow you on Facebook to just see what is happening. Because it's just really fun to watch. There's a lot of magicians that are going on tour, Justin Willman, all these magicians going on tour, but it is really fun to watch a grassroots tour explode and watch a grassroots tour happen. So really, really cool to watch. I guess one question that comes to mind for me that I know a lot of people are wondering is venues. One thing that's really difficult is finding the venues that fit the part. And I think a lot of times to do a show, sometimes it's a big venue, but sometimes it's like a small venue, 20, 25, 30 people. So how are you finding and booking the venues? Do you have any secret hacks, or you're just basically doing what everybody's been doing?
Okay. So, my big thing is be creative with the venue. So like, I just need a space, and I designed the show to where I can do it anywhere. Like I said, I did it for 8 people in my living room. I can also do the same show for, an auditorium of hundreds of people if I need to. But I hopped on Peerspace. I don't know if you're familiar with Peerspace. It's a website online where you can find venues, and that's what it is. It's a venue finding website. Some places like New York City, we did this incredible like indie theater space. It was so cool. It had theater lightings. It had like a green room, like a backstage area. It had curtains. It had tiered seating, everything. Philadelphia, it was like a small like wedding venue patio. We did San Francisco was a dance studio. Chicago was like at a gym that had a dance studio above it. And it was pretty cool. I mean, it had curtains and everything. So it's got to look nice because you're presenting this to people. You're inviting them. It's got to, you're charging people for this. But at the same time, like, be creative with it. Say, everyone's like, how are you finding theaters? They're not theaters. They're spaces. They're places that I can fit people in. And I'm hoping that the show creates the magical environment. And I'm leading into the environment. I'm saying, this is where we are. One thing I found is breweries. I'm doing some shows on Mondays and Tuesday nights. Not every show, but some of the shows just happen to land on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights. If it happens on one of those 3 nights, then the first place I'm going to go to is a brewery, because that's when they're empty. They're empty on those nights. And I'm going to say, hey, look, you've got the space, a bunch of chairs. You're just open, but no one's walking in. Can I do my show in your space? And I'm going to bring in, 30, 40 people that otherwise wouldn't be there that night. And they're all going to get drinks. And I have found that most of them will let me do it either for free or incredibly cheap, because I'm doing them a favor. And so that's been the big one.
Dude, I want to applaud you on this advice of get creative with the spaces. I think that's the best advice for anybody who wants to put on an event, especially right now where the theater spaces are expensive and getting booked. And, and if you're a magician, especially trying to grassroots these things, you're going to have 5, 10, 15, 20 people, 25, 30, 50, whatever, in your show, trying to see if it's viable by doing a small space is the way to go. You spoke in this thing about getting a building space to build, and you spoke about the woodworking space, and you spoke about building a lot in the pandemic. And I think a lot of people either struggle with or don't take the risks to actually go and build with your hands. So first of all, how are you, so able to build these boxes, to learn to build with wood, to build, I've seen some images from your show of some cool props and unique things you wouldn't see elsewhere. So first, how'd you learn to do it? And second, maybe what can you tell people who would like to be building themselves?
My big thing is what I've discovered overall, this is an overall philosophy of everything, is things just really aren't as hard as they look. They're just not. Like, people do things because they're doable. And this whole idea of building props, that was totally out of my wheelhouse. The first time I experienced it was when I had the idea for the time machine box. Originally, I was using a normal prop for Fool Us, like a very commercially available prop. And I said, you know what? I wish I could do this, this, and this with it and make these changes so it's way more deceptive. And it didn't exist. So I, on Brent's recommendation, we hired a woodworker to build it. And I was like, you know what? Getting someone to build things that if you need something and it doesn't exist, that doesn't mean you can't do it, right? It just opens up so much creative freedom to be able to just say, okay, I'm just going to have it built. But it's also so much cheaper. You go to a makerspace, and my friend Trig Watson was the one who introduced me to, maybe you know Trig. Trig's incredible. He used to live here in Dallas as well. And he goes, you should check out this makerspace. And he introduced me to, it's like a wood shop metalworking place. He introduced me to a guy who used to be a furniture maker, but he's into theater and he has this great eye for stuff. So he understands. He's a guy who I can go in and I say, I need a prop that does this, this, and this. And he intuitively gets the magic questions. Like he doesn't have to, I don't have to over explain the secrets and the methodology. Like, he gets it. He understands. And he's come up with some cool ideas too. He's like, wouldn't it be more deceptive if you did this? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. He's not a magician, but he gets it. And I've been fortunate enough to work with him. But what I do is I'll text him. I'll say, hey, I'm going to the wood shop tomorrow, building this prop. Are you around? And I'll go when he's around. And at first he taught me. So what happened was I used to, in this makerspace, you need to take lessons with the people who work there in order to use all the machines. And I kind of worked this out with this guy, Tom. I said, hey, instead of taking the official lessons that you teach on Monday nights or whatever, can we just, like, I'll show up, I'll say, hey, this is what I need to build. And then as I need, you teach me how to use these machines. So I started completely under his guidance and just building magic props just with him and him teaching me all the machines. Now I can go in, and if I know how to use something already, then I'll just do it on my own. But it was kind of this collaborative effort. But it takes some time to learn how to use it, but it's not that hard. It really isn't. If you have a space like a makerspace, a wood shop nearby, just go see if they have something cool you can use.
Two big, huge notes there. The first is makerspace. A makerspace being the place to go look for is such a good note. They exist in so many cities. That's a great one. But the second good note that you said is it's just not as hard as it looks. Go and try and go and play with it. And, the thing that keeps people away from these things is mostly in their mind. In reality, it's not as hard as it looks. It's fun. It's fun to play with your hands and, to use your hands to build things and to make things.
Yeah, and to emphasize the whole idea of it's not as hard as it looks, because the biggest question that, my friends ask me always is, how'd you get on Fool Us? Because it sounds like a ridiculous thing to get on. It's like, well, I mean, it was hard work to come up with a routine and everything, but like how the actual process of getting on, I filmed a video and I sent it to the producer, and that was it. Like, that's the process of getting on Fool Us, is you submit you film a 5-minute video and you send it. Of course, there's a ton of work that goes into getting the routine ready for that video.
I mean, part one, you call Brent Braun.
Part one, you call Brent Braun, 100%. Part two, you work on the routine with Brent Braun. Part three, you film it and you send it. And then it's like, yes, it seems insurmountable, but also the part that you have to do is really simple. You film it and you send it. Yeah, it's like, how do you do a national tour? It's like, You find people and you find a space and you get people into that space, right? Like it's what you do.
It seems silly, but you do actually have to articulate that, like, you have a little bit of, knowledge. Hey, there's a bunch of people in this city. You message your friends in Chicago. You're like, if I do a show in Chicago, will you come? Yes. Okay. You have like 5 or 6 yes or whatever. At some point, you need to book a venue. Even though you have 5 yeses, you need to book a venue with 25 seats, or have to sell X amount of tickets, and then say, now I have to sell them. You have to have a little bit of, I don't want to say faith, but you actually have to be the one to.
You have to believe in it. You have to believe in yourself.
Exactly.
You have to believe in yourself. And
you have to be the one to put the project in motion.
Yep, and you gotta do that and trust and be smart about it. I'm never telling anyone like, oh, go like put all your money on the line hoping this tour works out. But like, if you can afford to lose the $200-$300 that venue is going to cost at the but you think that putting a national tour together is worth it, and knowing that some of the venues are going to be incredible and you're going to be wildly successful, okay, I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of the tour stops I'm doing are making a ton of money. There was one of them that we did that only made $40 profit. Out of all the tour stops, there's one that made, after I took out the venue costs and the flight costs, we made a $40 profit. In hindsight, I'm like, man, that was not like super financially, I'm like, all the work that I did and the whole show put into the show, but I knew going into this that if I'm going to put together a national tour, and I'm going to do 15 tour stops, not everything is going to be 100% successful. Not all of them. So I came in prepared for like 1 or 2 of these probably won't make a lot of money, but the rest of them will. I'm going to trust that 80% of these are going to be successful. And so when that happened, I was like, okay, this was the one. This was the one that didn't work. And the rest of them are doing great. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I once asked a friend of mine who produced shows, I said, what happens when they don't work? And he said, it all comes out in the wash, which is to say, like, the one that doesn't work is counterbalanced by the dozen or so that do, right? And you have to be able to take those risks and see if it'll work. And also take small risks, not these big bets, 1,000-person theater. It's small venues that cost you no money or little to no money. And the costs are the costs of you getting there. Right.
And that's one of the things, like, okay, so Brent always tells me, he says, work on, 10 things at once, and, maybe a ton of them won't be successful, but the ones that are going to be incredible because you're working on 10 things at once. And the odds are something's going to take off and it's going to be great. Totally, this is something that I don't talk about, but I spent about 4 months this year in the process of auditioning for a TV show, like a national TV show that I thought would skyrocket my career. And I talked to the producers at every level. I got to like the top guys. Like, I was really like about to be on the show, and I was developing material for it and getting ready. And I didn't get it. And I spent 4 months of my life on this, and no one's going to hear about it. You guys on this podcast are the only people that know that. I never posted on Facebook about it. All my Facebook friends, they're never going to hear that. That never even happened. That never even was part of my story. Because I'm also at the same time the tour was the backup plan, because this is when they would be filming. They would be filming that show right now. So I had that TV show. I had the idea for the tour. I had all these different ideas that I'm working on at once. And when some of them fail, you just go, you jump to the other one, because not everything's going to work, but you have to try everything.
Love that. And I think in a world where people say do just one thing, especially as an artist, as a creator who is hedging a lot of bets and trying a lot of different approaches, that's a really, really good piece of advice to do a lot, try a lot. Not all of them will work, but the ones that do will make a really, really big difference. This has been really incredible, not only to hear about the projects you've been working on, but also to get behind the scenes into your mentality going into these things. I think there's a lot of mental game that takes putting on a tour and also going through some of the highs and not necessarily lows, but challenges of pivoting through the pandemic and pivoting back and taking those risks. So it's been really incredible. We're at kind of the end of the episode where there are the wrap-up questions. So there's questions that we ask each guest on the episode. And the first is the endless chain. So in order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest who would be phenomenal on here, a really great addition to the show. There's 2 catches. The first is that we didn't interview them already. The second catch is that you actually can put us in contact. So I will remind you that you have Penn's personal phone number while I ask you, who do you think? No, I'm just messing with you. Who do you think would be great for this podcast?
Oh my God. Okay, let me think. There's a lot of people that I think would be incredible, but come to mind. Have you interviewed Blaze Sarah?
No.
Blaze is incredible. Blaze is the best sleight of hand artist I've ever met, but he also does incredible stage stuff. He has incredible eye for like theatrical stuff. He's consulted for some incredible people. Blaze Sarah would be awesome to have on the show.
Love that. That's super, super helpful. The next thing is a question about modern magic. So what's one thing in the world of magic right now that you like, and one thing in the world of magic right now that you don't like?
I really like the trend that's of these like intimate like experiences for people that are almost like more than a magic show, but you come in, kind of like the trend of magic that not to say that I'm encouraging copycats, but like kind of like what Derek Delgadio did within and of itself, where it's like it's a magic show that makes you think, and it's a little bit more than a magic show and you don't really know what it is. I like that idea of making a magic show more than a magic show. And there's a lot of people that are kind of successfully doing that.
Like the experience type thing.
Right. Creating an experience where it's like, it's more, it's not a traditional, I'm going to sit down and watch a magician do tricks to have him, blow my mind, but actually have you think about things and wrestle with things or experience something or solve a puzzle. There's these escape rooms and things that are going on. So it's just non-conventional magic shows. I love it. And I don't like about magic. Well, let's see. I wish it was easier for people to find mentorship in magic. I wish it was easier for a young kid starting out in magic to be able to find a community of magicians who can, that they're not just isolated buying magic tricks online and learning from YouTube videos, but that they could find community easier. And with a lot of magic clubs dying out, but also maybe magic clubs weren't ever the best place to find those, who knows? But I wish good mentors were easier to find.
That's great. And especially for somebody whose story was all about a big transition happening when you were introduced to the community, in a broad sense. I love to hear that. The last thing is about plugs. Where can people find you, find the projects you're working on, and find some tickets for the tour if you are coming to their city?
Yes. So Bernini Magic is where people find me on most social media platforms, especially Instagram. So BERNINI Magic. That's me. And then tour. So we've got stops coming up in all over Texas. So we got Oklahoma City, and then we got Houston, Austin, Dallas, Waco. And then we're doing some stuff in Nashville, Denver, LA, Washington, D.C. I'm trying to get something set up in Louisiana. That's still in the works. And then, that's the thing is I don't really know when this tour ends because we keep adding things. Oh, Minneapolis. We're doing something in Minneapolis. But that's as part of like the Magic Underground thing they've got going on there. So if you're in any of those cities, I'd love to see you. BerniniMagic.com/tour is where you can get tickets. But here's the other thing. This is how this tour works. If you're in a city that I'm not going to, and you're like, hey, come to a show here. If I can cover the flights and the venue, like I will be there and, I'll hopefully make a profit. But like, this is how this whole tour works is people say, hey, come to my city. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's do it. Right. So I'm open to, I don't know when this tour is going to end. We just keep on adding. It was supposed to end like end of October. Right now we're through like mid-November, like November 21st is like the last stop right now. And we just keep adding things. So I don't know where we are.
Well, there you have it, my friends. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. The whole point of this podcast is that you learn something, maybe that you're inspired, but hopefully that you go and take action. And one little action might be sharing this, telling a friend. That means the world. But otherwise, thank you for being here, and I will see you next Thursday. Peace.